Hello everyone, today I have Wenting with me, and Wenting is one of the people behind Coding Font, which I featured in one of my articles previously when I talked about why I stopped using Operator Mono and the psychology behind what happened. And I'm really interested in having Wenting here today to talk about Coding Font itself, why the project became what it is, how it became it, and the different other things about Wenting. So hi Wenting, would you like to
Hi.
Introduce yourself and tell us a little more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Wenting, and I like Zell said, I work on Coding Font, but my main endeavor right now is a startup that I'm co-founding with my co-founder Hua Shu called Typogram. Typogram is a design app to help you design logos and brandings as a non-designer. So you don't have to have any design background and be like pro designer to create your own branding, including your logo, color palettes, and your entire identity system, including the typography system. I came from a background with very heavily emphasis on typography. Previously, I worked at Adobe for Adobe Fonts. It's also known as Typekit. I also worked on a few type-related, font-related projects, Coding Font being one of them, Type Detail another one. I'm just really interested in making tools for design and typography. So that has been kind of my adulthood or my professional life up till this point.
It's crazy because I have used Adobe Fonts and like Typekit for a long time. That was like my initial foray into custom fonts because I did not want my website to look like any other site on Google Fonts that is for free. That was why I didn't want to use Google Fonts. But yeah, and Typekit was my first endeavor into typography, and it's crazy how many fonts there are right now. Like sometimes I'm just confused about the number of fonts out there, and like choosing fonts is one of the problems I think many people are facing as well. And we do.
That's also,
yeah.
Choosing font is also one of the problems that we're trying to solve with Typogram. I think choosing font from such a vast library, just Google Fonts itself, Adobe Font, there's so many fonts out there. myfonts.com, MonoType has so many fonts. It's really hard to choose from them, and it just kind of scrolling through your font menu, bloated font menu is not the best way to do it. And you're always trying to find a font that's suitable for your project. We're not trying to find the best font ever. There's no such thing. It's usually to express a certain identity, right? Like a personality per se in your project. So that's one of the things that we're trying to address with Typogram, to help you find typeface easily. You don't have to install all of them on your font menu, scroll through them one by one, and like that's a horrible way to choose.
Yeah, that's a horrible way to choose, but that's what I've been doing. So what I did was I have like this thing called design cards, which there was a period of time where they sell font bundles at $29, where you can have like 13 fonts or something like that. And I bought a couple of them along the way. And right now I just go like poop, scroll. Okay, these are the ones that
this looks good.
might be interested in. Okay, and then bang. Okay, fine, whatever. Let's just put it there for now. Right? And then the other fear is like, is this font really telling, conveying what I really want to convey? Because I think the whole problem with typography is that the letter fonts, the shapes themselves, they are a new design language that not many people understand. And how that comes about is that a slightly different curvature creates a different feeling, and that feeling is subjective to someone else. So then how do you find the perfect font for you?
Yeah.
And perfection is something that we can rant on and on about. But what do you think about that? I want any thoughts about finding a font? Let's say if we do not talk about Typogram for now, like what's the current process, and what would be probably a process with Typogram involved? Because I do want to dive into Typogram a little bit more, but right now we are on this topic of font, so let's just put that there for now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think font, there's a huge disconnect between inside of the font itself. A lot of people need to use it. Font is something everybody touches on, and everybody can have opinion about it. But being an expert on typography is really rare. It's not a common skill or a common thing you can get yourself into. So everybody choose font, but not everyone knows how to choose a good font. And the payoff of learning like the ins and outs of like typography doesn't really pay off for most people, because it's normally not your core functionality, which is something I struggle a lot with typography. So like I don't dedicate my life into typography, but oftentimes typography is kind of superficial for most projects to make it look good. Like what you said, right? Your blog, the core value of your blog is the content that you write. That's what drives me to read it, not the typography. But you do care about typography, so make your blog not look like another blog on the internet. It has your own branding, it has recognizable. If I go to your blog 1 time, 2 times, the first time, for the third time, I should start recognizing this is you. This is the writer that I recognize. Zell wrote this because of the typography, because of the branding kind of associated with the blog. It is somewhat important, but not something is worthy of you spending like 2 years getting into nitty-gritty about typography to pick the good font. I can pick a good font for anybody because I know typography. And my process to answer your question, how to choose a good font, is to use filters. If you tell me, okay, I'm looking to express this and that, I can translate the meaning or the personality that you're trying to convey into parameters that I'm going to plug it into those software. In Adobe Fonts, in Google Fonts, there is, sans serif and serif. There's how slant or italic they are. There's weights. There's other characteristic like the height of the X of the lowercase letter. They all carry on their own meaning. I can go on and on about the X heights. Big X height means this, small X height means that. And I actually had to talk about comparing Chinese fonts, something they call 中宫, the middle palace, to the X height. There's a whole analogy, inside of it to choose a good font. And I know those things. So if you tell me I'm trying to find a happy font, and I know what parameters to plug into the software to find the font for you and recommend it to you. But it's not a skill that I recommend everybody spending time getting into. And that's what I'm trying to kind of bring to people who care about typography, but just don't know, like don't necessarily want to spend all the time to learn about X height or the middle palace for Chinese and the CJK, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean typography. So I would address that with Typogram, where as an expert, I handpick those different typefaces to express a certain feeling. And you just tell me what feeling you're trying to express. Are you trying to be more serious? Are you trying to appear to be more scholarly? Or you're trying to be friendly and kind of casual, kind of that kind of tone? And I have different typefaces that express that personality to you. So you don't need to know, okay, I'm gonna choose a middle range X height with bold weight and that kind of stuff to express that. It's all kind of curated for you already.
Yeah, it sounds like this is a field of like the deeper you go, the more kinds of how do I call it, properties, like different, like even X height with like
property, yeah,
or like small a larger hex height with a larger cap height, or a smaller hex height with a larger cap height, that conveys completely different meanings, and is based on the symbolisms that we have that are ingrained in us nowadays with all the stuff that we've been seeing around. So it's like,
yeah, that's exactly that. There's it's partially the characteristic itself, like how it conveys. It also has something to do with culture. If a typeface was just widely used for something, and people kind of start to accept that as it is, right? I recently heard something super interesting from my students because they were trying to make an app for dyslexia people, people with dyslexia, and she was telling me that she read a study that people choose Helvetica when they're dyslexic, which is so what typographers would think, right? Helvetica, a typeface, wasn't designed for the best readability, but because it was so just everywhere, people started to use Helvetica just for as a way to say sans serif. And what they mean by that, I really prefer sans serif. And now going back to sans serif and serif, serif is the one supposedly to be more readable and kind of recognizable because their stroke, serif fonts like a Georgia or Times New Roman, that's serif fonts. And they are have a variance in their weight. It looks very custom and the stroke is very recognizable, which should make them more friendly to people who have dyslexia. But because people are so accustomed in reading in sans serif, you might be trained to look at sans serif and feel more comfortable reading it. You're kind of talking about that when you're writing about operator model, how that affects the culture perception kind of affects you how you think of font is. You may not like it, but your other part of your society, of your culture tells you should like it. The programmer society is telling you should like this font. Everybody loves this font. Yeah. And it has started to, I made a font because I like operator model. Like I like that style. So I made my own version of it because I can't afford it. And I'm also doing a typeface project. And that's Helvetica version of the story. That's the operator model's version of the Helvetica story. So I think picking a font, if you consider all that, you consider the intrinsic characteristic of font, and also kind of the cultural background, what's hot today, right? Like operator is hot in the programming community. Helvetica was so hot in the 50s in the advertisement community, not community, industry. Then it becomes like a job to pick a font. And I'm happily doing that job for everybody. I love picking fonts because since I have invested so much time into it, if you tell me what font you want, and I can happily find a good font for you. I was even thinking, okay, when I started the company, I was like, maybe I can offer this as a service. You tell me what font you want to use. We can do like a 30-minute session to help you find the perfect like typography system for your startup. I was thinking like offer that as a service because I'm trained, I have the skill, right? And but it's not scalable, and I really just want to make things much simpler for people to choose a good, satisfying font. And what I want to tell people is like choosing a satisfying font is a very happy event that you should experience. Like I feel super happy when I find just the perfect font, and that satisfaction is rare.
Is that?
Yeah, the click, because there are more than 10,000 fonts right now, and yeah, it's hard to find a good font. I kind of just feel a little tiring after a while, like scrolling through it. I feel the opposite of happy when I scroll through font menu trying to find a good font. But when I use my method of like filtering down and kind of narrow down to like 10 font, and then from the 10 font I kind of do a little exercise and I find the perfect one. Like by all means, that's like the most perfect one in my eyes. I feel very satisfied.
Awesome. So just to let everyone know, because we kind of went into your service work and a little bit over here. Wenting over here has decided to leave Adobe. I think slightly lesser than a year ago from the date of this recording. I don't know when you're watching this, but slightly lesser from 1 year from the day of this recording. And she decided to jump into a startup by herself and with another person. So there's a co-founder, two of them, to create Typogram. So that's what she was talking about when she said she was thinking about offering as a service to help people find fonts. So FYI as a thing. But at this point, I kind of want to dive into why leave your job? Because if you're talking about salary payments, for example, like Wenting is earning 200,000 a year, which is so much more than I imagine myself earning at this point, right? I'm earning like 100K after working on my startup for a couple of years, on my startup, like my thing, and I haven't even hit like 150K mark. I'm doing something wrong perhaps, or something, or things I can improve on, but that's a side conversation, that's a side topic. And you wrote an article, Wenting, saying that you decided to pay yourself 200K. And I think that's a false assumption. You decided to pay yourself 400K instead.
Why? What's your math?
To test it for a year, because 200K is ordinarily what you have on the normal trajectory. You decided to cut that off and flip another 200K. because you could have earned it, but you didn't. So the gap is actually 400K.
I don't understand that though. I could have made 200,000 K and instead I made 0. So the gap should be 200,000 K, right?
Decided to, okay, that's a side conversation. And I don't think it's an important thing to have, but to me right now is you can choose to move as a forward momentum of 200K, or you can choose to move in a completely different direction. In that completely
I see where you're going with. I could be, besides not making money, I could be spending money to fund my startup, right? Like, right. Yes, that's also true. So you might be right on that. Although I'm not nearly spending $200,000 to on my startup to hire people. That's one of those things I should start doing more. People have been telling me to treasure your time, and that's why by the way, that's exactly why I quit my job, is to basically buy time with money. And that I wrote the article, right? My title is, I bought a year of time with $200,000. So instead of getting paid by another company, by working for another company for that amount, I decided not to take that. So in a transactional notation, I could record that I bought myself those time with the money that I would have made, which is also kind of a stretch because in my eye, money that I haven't made is not my money. So I'm spending future assumptive money that I would have made, guaranteed would make if I continue to work at my previous employer. The idea behind it is that when I think money is important when you need them. But if you have money, then you need other things, and money and time and resources and friendship, family, they're all things that you can pursue. And if I, as a current state of my life, need time, then I go and obtain that resource for me, which is time. So I'm willing to part ways with my salary so that I can get those time back for myself. And in the earlier days of my career, I think I would never quit my job because that's where I would spend my time anyway, like doing what I did before at Adobe Fonts, devote my time to typography. Is time that I would have spent without the job. I would just do that on my own, but it's not that case anymore. So I find that I would rather spending time making my own thing. It's no longer the thing I'm making at Adobe. So I don't see it's necessary to be clinging on to the salary, which is a hard thing to do, to be honest. And I anticipate it to be harder and harder because my salary would only go up. Well, hopefully, in an ideal world, it would only go up and I make more and more next year and upcoming year. So it would be harder and harder for me to quit the job and start pursuing my own things. So with that in mind, I quit my job now, so it would be the easiest time in the next 10 years to do it now and feel the less pain. And another idea to convince me not to do that is the multiplier effects, right? Like I make 200,000 K, like assuming I'm getting some kind of a increase every year, I kind of stop getting the increase. So my base stopped. Maybe I can go back to the job market with the same 200,000 K in a couple of years, but then my multiplier start from 200,000 K instead of what would it have been if I continue to work for the entire time. I could do the calculation all day, every day, and not to do any action. But I think in the end it's hard to calculate because I could do the same and do Typogram and it succeed and it become very financially supporting to my life, to my family, or it could fail and I go back to the job market because of all the experience I gained extra by founding a company. I could go back to the job market with even higher pay. So I think it's a rabbit hole to do like more and more calculation. It was just stop you from making any kind of a decision. End of the day, the decision was powered by this interest in Typogram. I have this idea, I want to make it happen, and I don't see it happening while working at Adobe. There's ethical issues related to it. I'm making a design tool, and while working for Adobe, the biggest design tool company, it's a conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
I need to declare exactly what I'm building to Adobe, and I don't see it being approved. I have declared that before. Actually, Adobe is quite generous in terms of your side project. You have to tell them what you're doing. And I used to like make a font for Google Fonts, and they're generously enough to let me do that. And that was, that was really cool. But I don't see like making a design tool, even though it's not a tool that they are making right now. There's no direct competition with Adobe. I still don't see that would fly with them. So I quit my job to do it. That's one of the reasons, ethical reason. I need to, be straightforward with my employer and not getting like my future company into legal troubles. Another reason is time. While working 8 hours for Adobe in the daytime and going back and work on another shift on my own company, it's hard. I'm not 20-year-old anymore.
The time energy equation is hard. Like the older you get, the lesser energy you have, unless you keep training your body and keep maintaining fit, and that physical momentum is there to supply you with the energy you need. But it gets hard. But what I'm noticing is that there's one quality I'm noticing, which is really nice, and that is what you want. And many people don't really know what they want, which is why they hesitate about quitting the job in the first place. Like people say, I want to build a startup, I want to this and that, but they do not actually do that because it's not because of the fear involved. It's because even if they quit their job, they don't even know what they want in the first place, and that makes it even harder to quit. So I just want to highlight this thing that is very apparent. Me at this point right now, and it's like, sometimes I don't even know what I want.
We might be on the opposite position of things. You have been doing your own thing for a while, so you might think, oh, maybe the other side looks more cherry, more rosy from your side of things. And I'm from kind of the opposite of things, where I've been working in the corporate life for 6-7 years, and I feel like, oh, it's so rosy outside in the Dell's garden. It looks so beautiful, like writing your own article and launching your course. And there's another argument for it, which, what we're saying reminds me of it. You're selling a course. You can sell your course to how many people, like unlimited people, and it will be the same labor. So that's also a huge attraction of doing startup things. So you're not selling time to make money. You're selling products, and the product can be sold unlimited with, theoretically with unlimited time, and you don't have to invest more time into it. So if you sell more, you have to invest time in sales, in marketing. Those are time spent, but the return can be exponential. It's not a linear relationship, right? But when I work at Adobe, it's a linear. So if I work a year, it's 100,000. If I work at half a year, then it's half of the price, right? So that feels, while I'm super grateful of how much money I'm being paid. It's a really good salary. The trajectory is not looking so fancy or rosy up there. It's, I know exactly how much I'm gonna make in 5 years, 10 years, and how much money I can accumulate along the way. If money is the thing that I'm pursuing, I won't be super rich. I will be living comfortably, but yeah. So that brings like two different points. Like, is money important to me? If it's super important, then I should do the startup. And on the other hand, if money is not so important to me, I should do the startup.
Yes, do a startup.
So in the end, I come into the very natural conclusion. I should do a startup. Like, whether I care about money or don't care about money at all, I should just do a startup.
Yeah, I think it came to a point where you reason that this is the most direct path forward, and there's nothing else. There's nothing else you can or should do or want to do at this point. So that becomes a natural decision.
Yeah, once you're, like you said, you know exactly what you want to do, and all this fluff, like my calculation, like my analogy of buying time with money, is all just tactic to convince myself to make the leap. And all the things that I said is just convince myself. and you will convince yourself because you're already determined. Once you're determined, all the things, whatever you say, whatever lousy reasons or lousy, excuse to make yourself, it's going to convince you because you're already convinced.
Yeah, it's like you already made a decision. The question is when.
Yeah. Once if you have an idea and you know you want to make it, I think you're going to make it no matter what. I remember people telling me that when I decided to go abroad and study, and I think I wasn't sure, because I haven't secured the fund yet, so I don't know if I can go. But one person told me very, just very surely, he said, you're gonna go. I said, why? And he said, you seem convinced, sooner or later you're gonna go. And that eventually happened. I didn't end up going with that semester. I wasn't ready, but the next year I went anyway. So, there's, you can tell sometimes. It's not the circumstance, it's not kind of the, if you have everything ready, it's once you're determined and you're a determined person, it's just bound to be happening.
Yeah, it brings me back into this incident where I was studying as well. That was like almost 10 years back. And there was a period where I got attached to a startup because my university, there's this program that attaches you to a startup for a year. And the startup I got attached to was in Shanghai, so I flew over to Shanghai. Real startup, no funds in the bank account yet, no revenue source, really bare bone startup, right? And then they decided to join an accelerator program, and all of them flew to London. I was stranded in Shanghai. And then I petitioned lots of stuff, and then I think I ended up paying the accommodations and stuff, but the schools paid for the air ticket for me or something similar to that. So I went for a month and then I came back. I was like, oh,
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's like, I'm grateful to them for sending me there, like even paying the additional fees. But there's also a talk about the determination that goes on because, hey, I am here. I don't want to be here. I want to be there to learn a lot of stuff. I think that perhaps brought me into where I am today because there's a big trajectory about my learning process during the school periods, and that brought me that trip to London stopped me from spending more time into learning about banking and finance because that was what I was studying. That was the trip that made me start coding.
Oh.
That was the trip where I decided to, okay, fine, fuck it. I'm not bringing anything to the table because I had a call with a friend. I was interested in doing startups back then. And then friend said, you didn't bring anything to the table after a long drill down of conversations into 5 a.m. into the night, that kind of stuff. And I go like, fuck. Fine, I'm gonna do something for myself. I don't care about anyone anymore. And then I just started learning design. And then from design I went into front end because I'm like, if I have design, I cannot put it online. What's the point? Okay, that's where it went in front end. And then once I went into front end, everything just started to snowball from there. And everything else is a blur. So that was a big point. The key here is about how determined you are to make something happen. And then in this case example, I also shared two, where one is me flying over to London. The second one is me being determined that I'm going to make something happen for myself, no matter what. And that turned out to be the inception, one of the life-changing points to get to where I am today.
That's interesting. That's super interesting. And I know that you want to ask another question about why I started with a co-founder. And this kind of lead to my answer to that. So if you don't mind, I want to answer that question. My co-founder is the type of person who think no matter what happens, the startup have to happen. So I'm the person who's more of like attached to the idea. Like I want to do Typogram. I want to make this design tool because I've been, passionate about making design tools at Adobe, and now it become my I owe that passion to myself, not just because of my job, it's become part of who I am. So I'm the person who go on Typogram doing Typogram itself. But my co-founder is the type of person who's like, Typogram or any idea is just the current idea of the startup. what needs to happen is a startup. I'm just going to do the startup. I'm going to make a startup work. So even if Typogram doesn't work, we're just going to pivot. We're going to find another idea. It doesn't need to be related to Typogram. It can be any idea. We're just going to keep doing things. So Typogram is more of a starting point for her, so that we start doing this thing and we can actually get some ideas out and talking to customers and see what doesn't work. And then we have a place to be, right? Like once we know this doesn't work, and then we have a direction of how to make that work, so we can go somewhere from here. So that's why I chose her as my co-founder. I think I needed that. You know, I'm also a person who have a lot of ideas, coding fund being kind of a side effect of that. Like I am very hard to fixate on one idea. Typogram is super exciting, but I could also see myself getting tired of it. I want to give up, and I could just go back to my job, like Adobe or somewhere else. That's not a good quality to have when you're in a startup. You have to have like determined to make this thing happen, no matter what. Even like this idea doesn't matter, or co-founder doesn't matter, or like I just need to make this happen no matter what. That kind of attitude is what my co-founder brings to the table. So with that, like I'm super passionate about the idea. She's too, but she's also just passionate about starting her own company, the thing itself. So combined together, I think I get more momentum, because there are times, because Typogram is the biggest project I have ever taken on my own. And there are going to be hardship. There's going to be a super rosy time that you know, the time when you code so much stuff over a weekend, you feel like the app is done, but it's not done. There's a lot of like sign up, you know, account management stuff that is so not so fun to build, not so glamorous and, you know, fun to do. You have to go through those valleys of startup life and prevail. And I need someone to kind of push me through those not so fun time. I could easily get just distracted. I love making those typography features in Typogram. I'm passionate about that. But in terms of like managing data, you know, creating accounts, just some like logistic stuff to make the app piece together, I hate doing those things, and I actually need to learn a lot of development skills to make something happen. I'm naturally more of a front end person, not so much of a back end, you know, wizardry, you know, all that stuff feels like I need to learn on the job. You know, if I make something happen in the back end, I literally have to like start with Stack Overflow to begin with. So having a co-founder helped me getting through that, because for her is the startup that need to happen. You know, these valleys, these little hurdles doesn't really matter for her. She will get past that, and it's harder for me to get past that on my own. So I think finding the co-founder is a perfect solution for that, because otherwise I would have just been doing coding font and then doing another thing. I have an idea book that has like 10 projects, and occasionally I will like spend a weekend doing them. But she has been so far kept me on tap with Typogram. Like this is our main thing. We have to launch this first and see where that lead us to next.
Wow, I think you have a really good co-founder with you right now. Like it sounds like a perfect fit for who you are. It's a little bit funny because I am a little bit of the two of you in a way, if I were to compare a little bit, right? I have lots of ideas, and then all my ideas are stuck in the idea chamber right now, because I'm like, I have so many things I want to do, but then no, I need to make this happen. Oh, I don't want to make this happen. Make this happen. So there's that internal struggle with myself, but I'm learning how to let that go, because I am doing this alone. And there is a hard thing about doing it alone compared to doing it with a person. And I'm not sure, but it sounds like you know Hua Shu before you decided to start a company together. You probably know her quite well. And maybe she's in Adobe, maybe she's not, but you have been interacting with her on and off basis, working on different projects, maybe.
Yeah. She's not from Adobe. It will be, I cannot snitch any of my colors from Adobe for 2 years. It's written in my contract. Yeah, I have read my contract after the fact that I have signed them. So that's a tip for you. Like, make sure you read your contract before you sign them. But yeah, we have been working together for a lot of things. We made another project called AnyCons, which is a icon font that can animate itself using variable font technology. yeah, so we start from there. And even before that, I think we have worked on a lot of different ideas. So that's the thing though, you can tell like she can work on any projects, and what need to happen for her is to found her own company. And I am an idea person. The reason I'm getting into it is because I'm passionate about the idea, and all the ideas that we have kind of co-create are all mine. Like I'm the idea person, and she's like the person who make sure it's get launched. Because like I said, a lot of projects initially will be super fun to do, but to wrap it up and kind of package them and launch them requires a lot of tedious work. So she will be the perfect person to say we have to launch it. Like we had a lot of fun building the initial part, but the not so beautiful part, we have to build that as well because we need to, launch it. Yeah, so we work really well together. We have this mutual trust where, there's gonna be hard times when you just fight and you yell and you cry. But because of the mutual trust, I know it's not gonna break this relationship. It's not gonna like fall apart so easily. There's some kind of robustness to it. I know like if we say hard things, we should not say hard things, but if we say hard things about each other, it's not gonna fall apart right away. There's some kind of elastic thing that is will last for a while. Will not break on the first break.
It sounds like you have a beautiful relationship with her, and that this can continue working. So I'm like really happy for you. And
Are you considering finding a co-founder? Is that why you're?
I am not. I have been thinking about doing a co-founder because, like if you're in a startup, I wouldn't call myself a startup at this point, or I at all, because startup seems to be more about projects and stuff. And I'm just a cost creator at this point. I want to move into making stuff. The first idea I have is a to-do list, and I'm still stuck on it. It's been 6 years. I haven't been able to code my to-do list. I'm angry about it. Okay, so the whole reason is I am not a very relational person, which I'm trying to change at this point. And perhaps because of the fact that a friend I trusted didn't really help me bridge the gap in a way that then I went back into myself saying that I need to do everything by myself. So there was a transition into let me do everything by myself as a personality. And then so far I've been doing everything by myself. I am tired here and there, but I do not know if anyone has the same passion for me inside the company I'm building. So if they are aligned, then yeah, I do not mind bringing someone into the team, but I'm not looking for a co-founder anymore at this point. I've been doing it for a few years. I know where I want to drive this project to in a way. And for Zellwk.com, it's really about having a platform to teach people how to code, because coding is the biggest break in my life, my first ever biggest break in my life, where I actually managed to go from I'm useless as a person, I do not know anything, I do not know how to contribute to anywhere, to being someone of even a tiny bit of value, where people want me to do something for some reason. Like for example, like the first thing it's crazy because I remember working in so after I came back from London, going back to Shanghai, I quit the company because it wasn't going anywhere. Joined another company, and then I started from an admin position. And one day I was coding my WordPress website, and then I showed the manager, "Hey, you see my WordPress website? I coded it on my own," and I was very happy about it. Right? So typical when you're happy about stuff. And then she's like, "Oh, can you change the color of this?" Yeah, so easy, done. And then she's like, "Ah," and then after I started working on coding stuff. So that was
it definitely feels very magical, right? I remember I was teaching designers how to code, and I remember this moment where most of the course we're teaching HTML and CSS, and the first course we teach JavaScript. And I remember the time the class is dismissed and everyone's like packing stuff. And one student asked me a question about something, and I told him how to do it. I told her how to do it. And as I walk away, she said, I think half said to me, but half said to herself, So JavaScript, anything can happen with JavaScript. So it's a moment that she realized that CSS, she might find out there's a little limiting with HTML, CSS, and the custom thing that she wanted to do, and I told her to do with JavaScript, and realized that anything is possible with JavaScript. It's very empowering to witness that, to witness the moment that she realized that. And it kind of also helped me realize that too, because I never kind of have that moment of, and appreciating the power of coding, and all your wildest idea with that context is about interactive idea. Want to make some crazy animation happen that was without not within the limit of CSS. JavaScript can make that happen. But it also goes beyond that context, that specific context of interactive animation. Theoretically, anything can happen with code, and it's very powerful to learn that. A language that it's not a language, it's a language, but it's also a language that can make things happen, make your ideas come true. I'm a designer who teach myself coding, and I find it's super empowering. So I really admire what you do, and I think you have a really good angle too, which is teaching non-coders to code, like not the traditionally trained developers to get into that. And I think that's super empowering. I have experience teaching designers how to code. That's what my thing, because I came from that background. I think for that niche is super empowering, but I could imagine it empowering so many people, people who are not in this business at all. Designers sort of already kind of 1 foot in the door, to get into the coding. Naturally, CSS, you may just want to learn a little bit more. Yeah, I super admire what you're doing. It makes coding attractive and looks easy, which it is easy to some extent.
Thank you. What I'm noticing is, you talked about the trials that you have to do when you go into creating things like the account system and all that stuff, right? I, on the other hand, is not thinking about that as a trial. I'm like, I need to fucking get this right before I can create my app. I'm stuck there. And one thing I noticed as I was learning, so I said I haven't really created the app that I really wanted to create yet, but it's not that I don't have the skills to do that. I already have it. It's just that as I go along, I want to push as many people along with me as possible, which is why I'm taking so freaking damn slowly. That's like a realization in a way, because I noticed my trajectory is getting from HTML and CSS originally when I first started blogging. And then it went into JavaScript because like so many people asking me about JavaScript questions, I got frustrated about it. So I created, that's just whole huge test course about JavaScript, 300 plus modules. I think it's more than like a year of university or something like that. But okay, that aside, everything I know about JavaScript written in a way that is sequential. Okay, sequential. I'm just like harping on it because it's so fucking hard to do. And when something is out of sequence, it doesn't really click. And that's one of the things I'm noticing as I'm teaching along the way. Like the blocks, they don't really need a sequence, right? But the lessons in the course itself, they need a sequence. And if you skip off that sequence, you go like, hang on, I don't understand this. And there's a gap. And when that gap happens, people's minds just go somewhere else and then they stop learning. That gap creates a fear in the, I do not know this. And then a lot of stuff starts happening inside that space of that gap. And that is so important to have sequential learning. But then again, I'm trying to make it non-sequential slightly inside my new course on asynchronous JavaScript because I decided to go deeper. And so I'm noticing that I'm going from front end to JavaScript to backend because I did like Node and Express and Mongo. I'm interested in creating a course related to that because it's like such a new system compared to front end. And it's like, and then the first thing is accounts management. How the hell do I do that? Like, so how do you create a basic account, like email and password? And then right now, since I'm talking about asynchronous JavaScript, which the whole problem with that is not about fetching data and end of story. The whole problem about that is all the different kinds of requests. And for that different kinds of requests, you have to go through say, like if you want to pull data from Twitter, you need to go through the authentication. That means you need to go into the OAuth side of things, understand what the hell OAuth is all about, at least partially what it is about, and be able to use it. So I'm going through that step-by-step process, and I'm just documenting everything I'm doing along the way inside like the courses or the blog. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing it so slowly. A little bit
It sounds
annoyed
like
about
maybe,
it, but I know that
yeah, I started to notice that we have a different mindset in terms of things. You talk about sequential, and you kind of demonstrate that with how you start working on projects by creating the sign up. And, that's the first step, right? Like when you use the app, the first step is to have sign up and account management. And you start from there. And I've seen people, I teach design, and my students, some of them started with kind of the center of the core concept. And some people do start with like creating the sign up and, it's kind of the first screen. I'm the person who are different from you. I would create the meat of the kind of the concept and then kind of wrap them more and more and more with other things. So all my app does not have account management. It just have like the bare bone of what it does. And then if I want to productize them, I start to create other things. And the same kind of sequential or non-sequential thinking also goes with learning, because what you said about, I think you're definitely the expert, and I believe you on that when you said you need to make a course that is sequential, right? If you don't know this thing, then the next chapter would not make sense to you. And this knowledge gap would prevent you from learning, because it's frustrating to not understand, not be able to progress. However, when I learn, not on the teaching side, as a student to learn things, I like to learn things when I need them. So I don't even know the first thing about this thing, but I could just jump right in the middle of it and start like Googling how to make this thing. And I just grab some code I don't fully understand, make that work, and then go back, kind of fill those little gaps, those knowledge gaps after the fact. So that's how I learn. And I understand that's not a good way to teach, though. That's super confusing. But as a learner, as a kind of self-taught coder, that's what worked for me. And that same mindset would go on about just how to make a product, how to design a project. And I would advise my student not to design the sign-up page, as a first step to design your app. Forget about all those things. Design what's different from this app to any other app, the meat of the app, the meat of the project first. And then if you need a sign up page, and then design it, or you can just not. I actually tell my students to forget about sign up, because why do you need it? We know there's going to be a process you sign up. There's nothing special,
Actually, on that point, I want to correct myself a little bit, because when I say sequential, it's really about the teaching process, because I've been like doing it so much, but it's sequential and not sequential at the same time. You can create like gaps, but you have to fill the gaps somewhere later, because otherwise people just go like, oh no, and then go off. But so it's really sequential but not sequential, but how the structure of things needs to flow. So that's the most important part. And I wouldn't say I create my stuff. Like I did not create the to-do list app because I need to work on the backend. I need to understand how does the backend work in order for me to create the front end that links together with the backend. So I'm inside that for a while at that point. Not now, I know now. So that was a while ago. And I need to know how to get the accounts thing to merge together with this to the backend, because I'm like trying to match the entire ecosystem. So I'm taking it one step at a time. But if I'm doing a project for myself, I don't really freaking care. I'm just gonna start with the meat of the project. Like you, like I also have that. Like for example, let's say in my designs on my if I want to redesign my website, which I kind of did before, right? And what I do is, okay, so the meat is the context, the meat is the article. So how do I want the articles to read? And then I just plot a paragraph and then put it inside my font thingy, and then like I will choose fonts based on the paragraphs that I wrote.
That's what I do. That's exactly what I do. I like to start from the most fun part of the project ever. And my shortcomings that I don't really want to get into the boring stuff. I think you're much better than me on that regard, that you actually get into finish the thing up. And the fact your newsletter feels just self-hosted, the whole thing. I like, when I want to write, I go on like Medium or Substack, and later on figure out how do I migrate like my entire subscriber list to another platform. I kind of like don't want to think about that. I still kind of want to postpone thinking about it. Those logistic questions, but I probably should have thinking about it to start with. And that's why, right off this meeting or chat, I was asking, how do you set up your newsletter? Because that's something I need to do now. Like now my newsletter has been going on for almost a year. I start to think, okay, then how do I do? Like I don't want to host my newsletter in another service anymore, but I also don't know how to start my own newsletter and make it kind of streamlined. My ideal setup is that similar to Substack or those services, I post an article to my front end. It will also send emails to my subscribers. It's just like I don't need to do something extra, like copy and paste to a email template and like style them. It feels extra work. That's my ideal setup, but I need to somehow build that.
You don't have to build that. I know where to get the ideal setup. I have been toying around with that. So
tell me all your secrets.
I've just been toying around with that for like the last couple of days. So to get that setup done, you need the best email system that I found so far for you is called Button.down.
Button.down. Okay.
Yeah, I can send you an affiliate link or something later. It basically costs like $5 per 1,000 subscribers if you do not need all the extra features like API support, which as a coder you probably don't need, like Zapier, which we can link things together, so we don't really need that. So it's like $5 per 1,000 subscribers, which is relatively decent. It's cheap compared to other providers. Like I use Convertkit as my main provider because at that point, way back, there wasn't Button.down, there wasn't anything. It was just MailChimp as the main thing. And then Convertkit came along, and I was frustrated with MailChimp idea of lists. And Convertkit came along, it was subscriber centric. So I don't have to create a new list for every single like thing I want to try. And then, find a way to send things to everyone. So it was like very clunky on that end. And I used Convertkit because that made things so much simpler. And I've been using Convertkit ever since, and I just didn't really want to change the system. I'm starting out a new project, which I call Zellwk.life, where I talk about anything that is not code related, but really just ramblings about my life at this point. Like I wrote 2 articles.
So it's a live stream, like is live stream like live or like more like a video production?
Like YouTube, like about my life in a way.
Oh, cool.
But it's kind of like what I'm trying to do over there is like reflections about what I'm doing. Like for example, the first article I had was rebuilding trust, where I noticed that I don't really trust myself in building the courses anymore because I have broken my promises to myself so much about the deadlines I'm trying to meet, and I feel so defeated about it. And how do I rework myself to a point where I can trust myself? And the only thing I can do is to start small, and that as an anchor, as a reflection, as a point in my life, I want to document that down. And I also want to share with others in case they may find it helpful somehow. I don't know. Like basically it's really I don't want my reflections, my realizations to end with me in a way. I want it to have the possibility to touch someone, inspire someone, feel that, you're not alone inside this journey of trying to make things work. That kind of stuff. I never really thought about it that way until now. I just thought I just want to share stuff. And then, so that's the first article I created. So I don't know how I'm going to move it for going forward. I only wrote 2 articles. I'm trying to make it a daily article thing, like a daily reflection, what's happening, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's a complete different side project, but we're talking about emails, right? So in this project, it's going to be a very simple thing. I have nothing to sell, nothing, zero. Like maybe in future, I don't know. But right now there's nothing to sell. I just want to write. And when I just want to write, then I was looking at email system that can I use Convertkit? And I'm looking at it, it says like it's probably better to separate the email list. In that case, I need a Convertkit account. I'm like, no, I don't really want that. So and I remember Button.down, which a lot of developers use. So I went ahead and checked Button.down, and it's cheaper. It is markdown friendly. Oh my god, I'm finding a email thing that is markdown friendly, and using Convertkit with the HTML thing is a problem to me. So I went and then I went digging deeper, and I'm like, oh, there's this API where you can send a broadcast. Interesting. I haven't really checked it out yet, but it sounds exactly like the thing you want to use.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll definitely check it out. It sounds like the perfect solution. And $5 for 1,000 subscriber is not so terrible. It's not so terrible in the newsletter land. That's considered cheap.
Yeah, and the first 1,000 is for free anyway. So like, I think you have like 400 from like somewhere in the middle of your in your blog post. I have no idea how much now, but perhaps you pay $5 a month at this point.
Yeah, I hope that I can start to pay very soon though. It is growing somewhat, and I don't think it's gonna stop at 1,000. But $5 for another 1,000 doesn't sound so bad, because I have big dreams for Typogram and for our newsletter. I write the newsletter to get more subscribers, to get more audience for our startup. And my co-founder also has her own newsletter, which is so much bigger than mine. So we will start paying right away. But with a 1,000 subscriber limit, pretty low. But we look at MailChimp, and we're gonna pay so much money like right off the bat if we want to keep using it. It's too expensive. I also look into self-hosting newsletter server, but all the software looks super complicated to figure out. I don't know if
I wouldn't go into self-hosting a mail server, because you have to start worrying about deliverability, which is the biggest problem. It's like you will dive into typography for another 2 years kind of thing just to get it delivered.
Got it. Yeah, it doesn't feel worth it, right? If you value my time, it doesn't feel. I also do a lot of calculation where I'm doing this work. I normally charge like $200 per hour for my professional job, and spending like an hour on like figuring out how to do the thing would pay itself for like MailChimp for like a few months.
Yeah, so like that's one way to calculate it, but I don't really like calculating like that anymore. Like I used to calculate like that, but and we can probably talk about that on a different day.
Okay.
Almost an hour.
Recently,
yeah.
I just want to add one thing, because recently I've been working on this Typogram launch, which is going to happen next week.
Yep.
One thing that really hurdled me up is to create the demo video. Like I'm recording how to use the app and kind of edit them into a video. That took me so long. Like this launch should have happened, 2 weeks ago, but it's not happening because of the video production was so hard for me, because I'm not a professional videographer. And someone has been telling me you should just hire somebody to do it, because your time is valuable. And I haven't grown into this, idea of hiring people, because I'm not making any money right now to hire another person. I am actually, what you said, right? I'm not making $200,000. I'm also like paying to get some job done. So that prevents me from doing that. But luckily, I have conquered that. After a long struggle, I finished my video. So it should happen next week. And just want to give a shout out on what are we about to launch, which is a really cool app that helps you design logos and design an entire brand kit. Super user-friendly, super easy to get into. And one of the benefit of our app is that we teach you design. We're not trying to make things automatic, like a lot of other tools trying to kind of hide the complexity of design and just create like the seemingly good results for you to pick from. We didn't go that route. Instead, we teach you fundamental knowledge about design, and then provide the tool that you can immediately apply what you learned into action, into making, designing. So I think, you know, it's going to be super helpful if you are passionate about design and just don't have the background. You want to design your own logo, you want to know a little bit more about branding, but you didn't go to design school. And I think our app is going to function both as a school, as like the educational aspect of it, and also the tooling, the Adobe side of things to help you realize your brand dream.
Yeah, so to add on to that, I saw the video, I'm like intrigued and I'm interested, and I'm thinking about, because you did focus on like logos, I think, somewhere around it. And I'm thinking about logos a lot recently. So like I'm like, interesting. I'll be interested in learning how to design my own logo with some sort of structure, like some sort of teaching, without having to pay a logo designer for it, because like I'm not like a big brand or anything. Like there's no need to. No, well, I'll perhaps I'll pay someone when I really get big enough, but not for now. Like even at 20K subscribers for Zellwk.com, that logo is like freak sense. With just I copied the Z, the letters, and then just slapped it in there and forget about it, that kind of thing. But I'm planning to change it in a new redesign, but that's another story, right? And I think it's interesting as what you're trying to do. So if anyone is interested in typography, in logo design, in figuring out how to, I think, essentially get typography to work for you, rather than feeling confused about this whole thing about design, because typography is like the first thing you should learn about design. Otherwise, everything is not essential at this point. Get enough information about typography, then you can start applying all the other things. And that is one of the core fundamentals of design. So
yeah, I agree. I think typography, what you said, is very fundamental to design and to kind of everyday working. You know, you're making a PowerPoint, you're making like a document, like a Google Doc. You need to choose a font, you need to choose a style, right? And I think I at a time, I think I still believe that typography should be part of the K-12 education. Because I would definitely benefit from that. You know, if you get a little bit of training in visual styling, and you're gonna take so much usage out of it, right? Whatever you do, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, there's actually a book about typography for lawyers out there in the wild, and I go to that site very, very frequently. So, you know, that's a proof that everyone needs a little bit of typography. It can help you progress your career, whatever it is, creative or non-creative. And I think Typogram could also be that source to help you get a dose of what is you need to know. Not too much, not too nitty-gritty where you spend like 6 years like I did into typography. What you need to know to create your logo, what you need to know to, you know, be kind of the person in your office to go to when you don't know how to do like a cool slides, and your slides is always better than everybody else's. Yeah, I think typography is such a powerful tool and fundamental to what you said. Very fundamental knowledge to get. It doesn't hurt if you don't get it, but it helps a lot when you have it.
Yep. So like before we wrap up, I noticed, I remember there was an important point that I wanted to kind of touch on and talk about a little bit, because you talked about the pressure of perfection, right? And I just happened to find the perfect solution, or rather to the problem of the pressure of perfection. I've been struggling with that for like, what, 30 years of my life. And then I noticed what was missing in this. The problem with perfection, this is what I learned, where I learned from. I'm trying to paraphrase it the best way I can. So the pressure of perfection comes from not being good enough. In a way, you do not have a standard to adhere to. So you're chasing a standard you cannot find. And you will never get that because you don't even know the standard to begin with. And you will never ever get that unless you can define the standards. So to combat the thing about perfection, is really about defining, it's about the precision of where do you want to get to. Once you are clear and precise about that, then everything will start falling into place, and then there's no pressure of perfection anymore. So just to give you an example, like the Zellwk.life example I was telling you about, right? I have big things about designing a blog. Like that is the problem why I kind of read this. You perhaps know about it. I redesigned my blog halfway last year, and then I did not continue with it. It was like a semi-dark blue background mood kind of thing. And I go like, I need it to be good because it's something for me. And then just a couple of days ago, I'm like, what do I actually need? And then I go like, I need a custom font, okay, and I need some text, and I want to write articles. What do I need? I need a newsletter thing, not too complicated, just some place for people to subscribe it. And that is the condition of satisfaction that I will set for my own launch. For this, for my creation, I need 7 articles before I launch. So it's kind of like I'm on 2 articles, so I haven't really officially put it out there. But by the time someone sees this video, it'll be up. So at that point, I go like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do to hit that condition and go. And with that, I get the blog up in that same day. That very same day. Once I figured out the conditions I need, or the next day, I can't remember, but it was only 2 hours to get all of that up.
I worked super well under a deadline. That's something that did help me combat perfectionism. Most of the time is extrinsic timeline, the deadline that someone imposed on me instead of self-imposed, that usually works better. I think I agree with what you said. I think, setting a time, once you set a time that you want to do it, and then you list all the things you need to do, and with that constraints, it's easy to combat the need or the urge to be perfect about it, right? Like once you check all the check boxes, it's ready to go. Theoretically, you can go on forever to make it more perfect, but that's at a point of very diminishing return. Like you spend more and more, but the return that you're getting out of it is smaller and smaller as you go along. To the point that is.
Yeah, I'm not talking about time as a factor, because it's actually what do I really want. And the conditions I'm saying is, what is the conditions that which I will be satisfied at for now, for the next stage. Because you can have like a marathon, and then the first part of the marathon is to get to 100 meters. The next part of the marathon is to get to, like if you're traveling between towns, the first thing you do is to get to the second town, and all you do is to think about getting to the second town. But when we have the idea of perfection, we have this big idea. We are trying to we're trying to travel this entire mileage marathon all at once. But if we say, what is my conditions for satisfaction for the next point, then you go like, okay, this is only what I want. And if I'm hitting whatever I say I want, I am satisfied. And the key thing is the satisfaction condition, because if you are working on the project, let's say, I do not know about other people, but if you're working on a project on your own, you need to be satisfied before you say that I'm satisfied with this, let me move on. And once you list the conditions of satisfaction, it is very clear what it is. And once you hit that, you go like, I'm done with this. And it becomes so much easier to get to that instead of, I'm trying to, and then there's no clarity about it.
I get what you mean now. If I paraphrase what you said, it's about slicing up the bigger goals into smaller chunks so that you can hit milestones more frequently and get a dosage of satisfaction, so you can move along. So it's not always chasing that, the goal that's so unreachable and you're going to feel miserable for the entire time of chasing it. Instead, you're going to hit some of the midpoint checkpoint, like you're running marathon, there's checkpoints. Once you get to checkpoint A, checkpoint B, you can feel celebratory for a little bit before you go on. You can have a fresh start till the next checkpoint. That's a really good advice.
And diving deeper into it, the checkpoint is not like, oh, I'm done with this, because like I'm done with this is a very ambiguous thing. The conditions of satisfaction must be clearly labeled. It must be distinct. It must be something that you know that you can check yourself against. It's not something like, okay, I'm going to choose the right font because right is subjective. It's a moving goalpost. But you can say, I'm going to choose a custom font, right? And then the process of choosing a custom font is going to be, I'm going to scroll through this once, pick out the ones I want, compare it to what I have, and then bam, that's it for now. I will think about it later. And then it's like, okay, fine. At first you'll be like, huh, is that it? And then you go like, once you do that, you go like, that's actually okay for now.
Gotcha.
There's no happiness or anything from it. It's just a satisfaction. It's a completion of what you wanted at this point. The point that you want to get.
I get your point. I think professionalism is not a terrible thing to have, to be honest. Depends on where you are. Professionalism is what got me here, but not so good for a startup owner. Because if you're, I'm also super like a craftsman type of designer. I cherish my craftsmanship on design, and I can just go on and on about typography. I learn ins and out. I go as far as learning how to design typeface to understand typography, and design my own typeface, and I do all those things. Because the craftsmanship, it's endless. You can just climb and climb, be more and more perfect, be more and more better at what you're doing. That's a good thing, because I'm a professionalist. I want to be the absolute, like the perfect, like I want to design the perfect thing. And the pursuit of that helped me get so much learning out of it. But it became a hurdle when I now convert my role to be a startup owner. I in the beginning, I still carry the kind of the professionalist mindset. I want to, like, everything I launch, everything I push out need to be perfect. But in a startup world, it's not like that. You're not gonna, your ideation of your notation of perfection is within the bound of your understanding, right? Your knowledge, what you know. So it's not perfect anyway. It's what you know, like within the realm of what you know, it is the best one. But there's so many other things that you don't know, and that's the point of startup, that there are more things that you don't know than the thing you know. In design, it's the opposite. I think I could know design pretty well. It is a known realm that I can navigate. I can just push the boundary and learn everything I need to know. But within a startup, I don't know most of the things I'm doing. I don't know if people need typogram. I need to find out. So the perfectionism is very constrained because you know so little. So your idea of perfection doesn't really mean anything. It's not nearly perfect in the real world. If I truly know this market and I know ins and out about my audience, not my audience, my target user, and how they design a logo, what they need. If I know it so well as I know design, as I know typography, I could just close the door and make the perfect app, the most perfect app for them, and launch it. But that's only assuming that I know, but I don't. So I need to launch something and go from somewhere. That's the mindset of my co-founders. Just create something, anything, and then push it, in front of the user, and then find out what works and what didn't work. It's a way of learning more, and without knowing the majority of the things in your realm, the perfectionism doesn't really carry any weight or meaning. So I need to really stop being the kind of perfectionism. The same with a video. I don't like, my ideation of the perfect video is not even nearly as good for a video in a video standard. I just need to get it done, and that's what's so struggling for me. I just need to finish it and put it out there. Stop finessing the little things. And earlier I said about the point of diminishing return. Like, the more time I spend on it, I'm not getting return. If I spend like 2 hours on the video, I'm getting huge returns. I'm from a no video, I have a video, right? Very crudely down, but it's a video. But then, like, I spend next 2 days on it. Yeah, the video is much better. I guess still get a lot of returns. But up to this point, I've spent like almost a month on this video. It's very little return up to this point. I make little things a little bit better. You would hardly notice.
And just to bring it back to learning, for example, if many people are stuck with, so at least whoever who is in my email list, many people who are learning at the start, they are stuck with, I want to get to, say, a full stack developer, and they do not see how to get there. And they are essentially saying, I need to learn everything at once. And that is overwhelming because you really set yourself up for failure by doing that. Instead, it's about, which is why when you're really interested in something like what you do, like how do I learn this? And then you go start learning that. That one point by one point by one point by one point is actually a good flow that you can use. It doesn't have to be sequential, like in the learning process. But having something that is sequential and complete, like learn JavaScript, will be very helpful in filling any missing gaps that you have when doing the random going all around kind of learning, which I also do. Like, and once you have that, the key is to really set what are you satisfied with. Like, say for example, I'm just going to try doing 1 hour today on this one. Whatever I do, like, that's it, because you can set any arbitrary thing as long as you're satisfied. You can set time as a factor, you can set a certain goal or milestone as your factor, and up to you. You can even go like, oh, I'm just going to try doing this for half an hour. And half an hour spending time on this is my satisfaction condition. Whatever happens in the half an hour is, okay, fine. I'm not happy about this, but I'm satisfied. It's a different feeling between happiness and satisfactory. So I think I want to wrap up with that because like the topic of perfectionism and is so hard hitting. And I just recently had a little bit more insight into how to work through it or how to handle it. And I really want to share because I think that's what was hitting you like just yesterday in the article. So that's something I wanted to share. And with that, let's bring this to a close. One final thing is, where can people find you?
Where people can find me, I have a website called Wenting.net, and it has everything I've done so far. And you will find my newsletter there. I think newsletter, which is build.typogram.co, is the place I write about all my journey, like every week. So you're gonna learn so much about me just through the things that I wrote recently. Kind of too much TMI about my life and the startup that I'm building. The link that I want you to check out the most is Typogram.co next week, because we're launching a new homepage next week, and you're gonna see the ins and outs of what we're building, where is this headed. If there's something interesting to you, consider pre-ordering it. That's gonna give us so much motivation to keep working on that.
Okay, with that, thanks everyone. Thanks Wenting for being here. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Zell.
Okay.